baseball the team here at Kenyon, and I was also part of the podcast team fraternity here on campus. Originally born in Illinois, still live in Illinois, about 15 minutes away from Evanston now. I currently have been working for Ameriprise Financial in Chicago. It's a national firm. We're actually one of the biggest comprehensive financial planning firms in the world. There, I'm just a regular financial advisor, REITs expert, if anyone knows what those are. I also head up the Community Connections Division on the North Shore of Chicago. Guys are actually in for a treat. First time I've actually really given a seminar to students, so we'll see how that goes. A lot of my job entails me kind of giving market volatility seminars to a lot of professionals and people in the real world, but I haven't given one to students yet, so we'll get off to start here and see how that goes. Really, when I was starting to prepare for this presentation, I initially created this and it had 11 slides. And when I was done with it, I realized that presentation was going to be about 5 minutes. I'd probably have to lengthen it up. So I went back and added another 40 or so slides, and I realized, well, that presentation was going to be about an hour. So I think I hit somewhere in the middle. Hopefully, really the main objective, those of you guys that saw the description of what this is all about, is really kind of the first 6 months, my first 6 months out of Kenyon. What I experienced, the path that I personally took, but also what was going on at Kenyon my senior year specifically in terms of what resources did I use to try to find a job, what were kind of the hardships, but also the positives that I took away from the job search and kind of get to where I am today. My main objective today is that most of the stuff that I'm talking about, you've probably already heard it 100 different times from 100 different angles. So I'm not so sure if the information that I have is going to be so much different from what you've already heard, but at least it's another perspective and different angle for a lot of people to take a look at. So keep in mind that it's my path, it's not necessarily your path. Everyone's path in this room will probably be quite a bit different, but also have some similar themes within it. Really the biggest thing, we're going to try to get through these slides. I don't think it's going to take too long. But really any questions that you have, bounce off me, provide you with any answers that I think that I've experienced. I'd love to do so. So we'll open up for Q&A at the end. We'll go ahead and I can walk you through what I experienced and kind of what I found that works. Kind of my senior year in job hunting, I kind of heard this from a lot of people that had already graduated before me, and people in my class. But I had no real clue about what I wanted to do after leaving Kenyon. I had this economics degree. I felt pretty good about that. It sounded pretty great on paper. I really liked my major, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And that was probably the first struggle that I had. Really probably starting at the end of my junior year, then coming into my senior year, was, well, I had this economics degree and I went to a great liberal arts school here at Kenyon, but what am I going to do with that? And in fact, I'm really still trying to figure it out. I have a great job that I love. I'll talk a little bit about that later in the slides, but still trying to figure it out. We're all still very young. You've got to keep that in mind. Have a perspective. Take a step back and take a look at your life. The first job that you have might not be the job that you have for the rest of your life. Back in the 40s and 50s, a lot of times people graduating from college went into a career right when they graduated. These days, it's not uncommon to change jobs 4 or 5 times in your lifetime. So always have that perspective and always kind of be in search of that perfect job. But we'll get into that a little more. So at that point, I was kind of up in the air about what I wanted to do. So I kind of decided, well, what are my strengths? And as you know, I teach a sociology class, and we all have different strengths. We all have different characteristics that make us unique to prospective employers out there, our friends, our family. We're all unique in our individual ways. So it's really trying to identify the strengths that you have as an individual and then really how to leverage them on the job market. So if you're very analytical and you can think outside the box, that's great. Leverage that in your interviews. Leverage that in everyday life. If you're very personable and you really like to get to know people and be friendly, use that as well. For me in particular, I took a look at what were the strengths for myself. And although I get nervous at times, I'm generally a very personable type of person. I love to talk to people, I love to meet people, become friends. So that was important to me, that I was able to demonstrate that in my interview to kind of really show, I don't know what you want to call it, charisma. I doubt that some people would agree with that word, but really showing off yourself. It's really selling yourself to the employer. Funnel technique to do so. I've already had a couple people ask me. Alex, one guy's name is a funnel technique. I made up the word. I'll be absolutely honest. More or less what I had in mind though, is you start really broad with absolutely everything that you think that you can bring to the table for an employer. So, put some examples down. I was an economics major. I was a baseball player. I'm personable. I'm generally a very straightforward type of person. I don't generally like to beat around the bush too much. And then all the other, 10, 20, 30 things that you have, then really funnel it down in terms of, cross half those off your list once you list down all of them. And then cross out half of those. And then you really come down to maybe 5 or 6, 7 core values, core characteristics that you think that you can bring to the table that really separate you from everybody else. And really those are the things that you're going to want to focus on in that interview. And even before you go into that interview, take a look at, I'm very good with numbers, or, I'm very good at being able to listen and understand someone else's point of view. It's not about sitting down and really figuring out, how do I show that to you? So, sometimes that takes a little bit of figuring that out as well. Like I said, I was an economics major. I figured I'd probably do something in my major. However, don't let that limit me. In my field, as a financial advisor, if you don't know too much about it, off the top of your head it might sound like, that's only for people in economics or took accounting, really boring people. But no, absolutely not at all. A lot of the people that I work with are history majors, English majors. So, look outside your field, don't limit yourself. We're all still very young. At that point, I really figured out what I thought that made me unique, and I really contacted the CPC there, had some help in creating my resume. I ended up signing up for I don't know what you would call it, Work Chicago, kind of like all different companies come together in one central location, and you send your resumes out to them beforehand, and then they pick the people they want to interview. So that's what Work Chicago was for. I submitted my resume to several different companies. And a few of them sent me back invitations to come interview for them. So I went off to Chicago, interviewed at a bunch of different places, on and off in the beginning, the fall of my senior year. And then some of them for their interviews also asked for additional information. Also needed like a supplement, kind of, as we saw for Kenyon. We applied here. Waited for a response, and I took off for Chicago. Kind of why I'm here, I already talked to a lot about this already. Looking back at my experience, I definitely wish I'd been a little more proactive. My experience was a little uncommon. At the beginning of the year, I submitted my resume, put all my stuff together, submitted it to several jobs, went and interviewed, and actually my last interview on my first day of interviews was with Ameriprise Financial, and lo and behold, I'm actually working for it right now. But don't limit yourself. If I could go back and do it again, I feel like I was very lucky. I love what I do, but really get out there, interview in a lot of places. You'll end up probably surprising yourself and interested in getting as you can see, it's pretty self-explanatory, kind of what I want to cover today. Just really putting yourself out there, looking unique, understanding how to dissect the interview process, kind of really getting an in-depth sense of, not just submitting my resume, it's more than that. It's really polishing yourself, I guess is the way to put it. Career Development Center, doesn't hurt to go, you can only gain from it. Preconceived notions. A lot of people I talk to that year, I'd say probably the majority of people I talk to were very proactive with using the CDC, myself included. Definitely went there and they helped me fill this up. But there were always a few people that I talked to that kind of figured, I don't really need to use the CDC. I already have a job lined up for me. My dad owns a dealership, so I'll go work for him. Or, whatever it may be, a preconceived notion, it's not always good for you. You're better off finding companies on your own. Not so much. In some cases, that's not a bad idea. But get as much help as you can. Use the resources around you as much as you possibly can.